So today we're going to make a lazy bag. We're going to start it anyway. And this one, I don't have the boat. It's on the hard ram, I believe. And the sail is over there. So we can't measure the boat. And we'll cover measuring the boat in another video when we actually have a boat to measure. But we do have the old lazy bag, which will give us enough information to build a new one. Lazy bags are built in two pieces. There's a lower section that goes from the boom up to the batten pocket, and then there's an upper section that goes from the batten pocket to the zipper. Now we need to know, on the lower section we need 3 dimensions. At the aft end we got about 13 inches to the top. 13 aft. Then forward about 43. Our material is 60 inches wide, so that's 43. We'll have 17 left over, and I need just a ½ inch at the top on this piece. So that would be 13 and a half, and 43 and a half is our cut dimensions. And we can get that from one piece, I believe. 13, 44, 40, 57. Yeah, so we'll have 3 inches left over. Perfect! In fact, we might just make it a little bit bigger and skip that extra. Instead of having a 3-inch strip that's 18 feet long, it's pretty much useless. We'll just make this, say, 14, and that would be 60 less 14 and a half is 45 and a half. So this would be 45 inches. That way we just make one diagonal cut across the 60-inch piece of cloth. Just leaves us wondering how long it is. $17.7. It's a little bit longer in the aft, so we'll say 18 foot. 18 feet. To 45. $14 and a half to 45 and a half. Stop, please. Oriented, so this is the inside of the bag. So let's look at the top then. The upper section goes from about 8 inches to about 12 inches. But I suspect that this is not enough because usually, and you can see right here where they had some Velcro on here. Excuse me. Where they had the Velcro here on the top, it's all burnt and it's like this has been opened because the sail was actually here. The sail was up, coming up like that. So they never did close this and it just laid open and probably burnt the head of the sail too. So we're going to make this last piece come up a little bit higher. Let's say, so we're going to go up to about 18, I believe. Will be nicer. And then we'll make a curve. It comes down from 18 down to 8. These are all going to be cross-cut pieces because we don't want to cut 2 8-inch strips 18 feet long and have, you know, all this leftover material. So start with making 4 pieces just straight 8 inches wide. This is where the top piece is attached. It's going to be, that's going to be like this. I took that into account at least. Then I've got, there's an overlap here of a 1/2 inch. And then at the top I have an 1.25 inch hem. And so that means I'm at 9 1/4 plus a half, 9 3/4, just call it 10 inches. Then we'll have one piece that curves, begin the curve from 10 to say 13, and then we'll do 13 to 20. 10 to 13. On this side, 13, 10. And then we're at 13 to 20, 20 to 13. So that's my 1 inch overlap. So yeah, we're going to put them together the same way. We're going to sew the adjacent panels together face to face, open them up, and then zigzag across the seam to give it some strength. put it in its place on the floor there, so we make sure that you have one right side, one left side. In order to sew them together without using tape, without wasting a lot of time messing around with the seams and stuff, we just have to make sure we pick them up correctly. So we've got the bottom side is up, so that means we want the raw edges on the inside. It's inside out right now. So that's our first joint, is this direction. And I'm going to bring that over outside to outside with the joint on the inside. And again, these two are outside to outside. The joint is on the inside. So that's where it looks like when we pick it up. And we'll just lay that on the table. And you'll be able to tell that you've got a left side and a right side when you're sewing them, because they'll be opposite. You'll be sewing one, you'll start with the aft end, and the other one will start on the forward seam. And if you don't, you messed something up. You didn't get them put together correctly. Line it up with the foot on the even there, more or less. Pull that under. And the next one. Pull the seam tight apart while you're sewing it. One of the neat things about this is that if there's any irregularities in that straight stitch you did to seam it first, they'll come out. They'll come out of it as you pull it straight. If it wandered a little bit, the finished seam will be straight. That goes.
Here's one done.
This one, yes indeed, we're starting on the aft seam first, so we did it right. A little detail here. When you make the front piece there, it is somewhat important to make it, like you can see on that stack pack, they didn't do this. They just sewed it together just like that. But the mast is right here. And so when you sew it together like this, the zipper doesn't reach the mast by a few inches, and it leaves, and this is always the hardest part to get to cover up, is the head of the sail. So I always take and run this in the same angle. So that we continue that line up the mast. So I'm going to run through and mark out final cuts, seam allowance. So this is a cut line. We're going to have a 2-inch double rubbed hem forward. And when we cut the sailcloth to line this with, always line it fore and aft on the lower section, continuously on the upper section to help chafe, particularly on the lower section. On the top, it just helps to protect the sail by get another layer of material to keep the sun off the sail. So it's 2-inch hem allowance there. I've got 1 1/4 inch on the top. It's 1 1/4 inch because this is the width of the zipper, the width of half the zipper, I should say. So that when this is folded over and we're attaching the zipper, they'll be even right here with the edge of the zipper and the edge of this umbrella, and this part will all be covered in a Dacron sailcloth. It makes it much easier to get the zipper installed straight and well. So I want 1/2 inch hem allowance on the top, but a little bit more sometimes helps. Do like 5/8. The bottom, it's going to be right even. And everything is the same after this. In the top, you go, from this edge, even with that edge, up to that line, to the seam allowances, covered with Dacron. It's really not very exciting. But I'll just stick this one real quick and then move on to webbing and the reinforcement.
I don't remember if you said in the other video why you put Dacron there.
Why?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because this is the fore and aft are the parts where you got the reef points. So the sail is much thicker and heavier, and there's hardware and there's all kinds of stuff. And generally, the sail just sticks out more and rubs on things more because it's stiffer fore and aft where the reef points are. So this, if you don't put something inside the bag, it'll chafe through the umbrella. So this just protects the umbrella from getting destroyed by snail. We need reinforcement where the webbing holds up the stack pack, and this is going to be a four-piece stack pack, four pieces of webbing. So the webbing comes out of this seam. What we're going to do when it's all done, we're going to build a batten pocket that goes right here. You can fold that over, sew it, and then the webbing goes through this seam right here and out, and then back in. Anyway, so we need to mark each piece and then build the reinforcement patches, because there's a lot of load on the webbing. So we'll start the aft webbing will probably be right about there, and then the forward one we can tie the front of the batten pocket. We'll tie that up to the mast usually. So the first webbing, we'll call it 14 feet. Let's call it 160 inches. Blessed with the crappy metric system, you get one of these, and then you can have a real number. 4 foot 8 inches exactly. So 14, 4 foot 8. We've got 26 inches on the back. When the stack pack is up and the lazy lines are all there, you want to make sure they're the same, symmetrical on each side. So okay, so now we've got the outside, the upper piece laid out, and now you kind of imagine how the lazy jacks will look, and they will look sort of like this. You've got the bag here, and they'll be coming down from the mast, and then it'll break into two pieces, which will each break into two pieces. So I want the webbing to sort of be like in that angle, so it sort of lines up with the lazy jacks the way they come down. Although it's not a critical issue and it doesn't really probably make any difference at all. It's just, I think it's an aesthetic thing. Anyway, so I'm going to mark this one there with an X on that side and an X on that side. This is going to tell me when I put the webbing on, it'll be on just on this side of that line, and this piece of webbing will be just on that side. So when I sew the two halves together, instead of running over a big fat hump with 2 layers of webbing, it'll just be a side to side. 2 layers of webbing right next to each other. So this is going to be sort of angled that way. like these reels for the diameter. It's a nice diameter for this application. So the fore and aft webbing straps are on a piece of Dacron already, because there'll be a piece of Dacron and aft when I'm done with that. So you don't need to put an extra piece of Dacron there. So we're just going to cut 2 of these. Middle it to go in center. I'll put it on there. Hold it just a little ways back. You don't want to crowd that hem, because if this hem gets too small, especially where it's thick, it starts getting hard to fold over. And so middle it. Hold it down 5/8, 3/4, something like that. Then we cut the webbing. Side with the X. You come up here. This is where it exits the bag, right through there. We need to leave some outside, to tie the tire lazy jacks onto, and then it actually goes like this, and then we'll come down here and cut it right there, and then here we're going to make a mark probably about there. So this part we're gonna sew it together so that it's like that, because it's better. It's got better chafe resistance if you do that. I'm going to take it at the cut line, double it, mark the cut, mark the sewing bit. That's where we're going to sew it double, and then mark which one this is.
Who's Mark?
Mark?
Yeah.
Make a mark. So then we set those aside for when we start sewing. What else? I think we're at our next episode.
Yeah.
The stack pack is suddenly going to change color. Right? It was a different. No, it was still blue. It looked like the same damn one.
Maybe not the same blue.
No, it was. It's the same blue.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that covers it. You reckon?
Yeah, I reckon.
Gonna go a little bit longer stitch. Uses less thread. not as strong, but it doesn't need to be. All of our chafe gear and our reinforcing patches are sewn. Now we're going to hem the top edge. So this is the top edge, and this is going to be the finished edge on the outside. You'll see this. So and this is going to be a straight stitch as long as the machine can go. Try to aim for about a 1/2 inch hem allowance. As you can see, when you get to the thicker parts, it's just barely enough. In fact, it's a little easier if you run it about 5/8 of an inch hem allowance. Kids, so yesterday we made all our webbing straps, marked them out, and now after the hem is done, then we put these on. And this one, I believe, is number 1. We also marked when we marked the lines that these will go on. We marked the angle of the webbing will go at. We marked which side of the line the webbing goes on, so that on this half of the bag it's on the forward side of the line, for example, and on this half of the bag it's aft, so that when we sew it together we don't have the two pieces of webbing on top of each other. Little details that make things a little bit easier when you're later on. I also want to extend this line all the way up to the hem because it makes it a lot easier. This is one of the parts I used to use adhesive tapes, double-sided tape, and actually tape the webbing onto the bag before sewing it. And as with many things, I don't tape it anymore because it's a waste of tape, and once you get comfortable with sewing it, you can just hold the webbing in place. But any of these things, you can tape it down beforehand as well. It makes it a lot easier to handle. And so we're gonna, this first part of the webbing where it's reinforced, basically this is doing all the work of holding up the weight of the sail and the bag and everything. It's going to be tied up to the mast with the lazy lines. So this part here is where all the structure is. This part, the tail, is basically just adding some reinforcement and structure to the rest of the bag, but it's not doing any of the work of holding up the weight of the mainsail. So we're gonna use stitch it more heavily in this section, and we'll do that by using a 1 millimeter long, 10 millimeter wide stitch that makes a very short stitch, lots and lots of knots basically, because every time you make a knot with this thread you get about an 8-pound per knot strength. So we're going to put in many knots and get it a lot stronger in this portion. So that's it. That's all the structural strength that we're going to get. So from here on out, I'm going to make the stitch longer. It uses less thread. It's less strong. It's going to be 3 millimeters long and 10 wide, but it goes faster. Hey, give me my chalk. Give me my chalk. Give the chalk back to Dad. Give me my chalk. No. Hey, give me my chalk. The chalk. Give me my chalk. Oh, man. What is that? Chalky. For no particular reason, I hate lifting the needle and starting over again if I can help it. And one of the things I do is develop ways to sew like your webbing strap onto the sail without ever once lifting the needle. And it's not really important to do it
Save some thread.
this way. It saves some thread. Ready for the batten pocket, which we haven't built yet. The batten pocket is not exposed to sunlight. It lives in here, and it lives at the top edge of the lower half of the bag. Then the upper part that has the zipper and stuff, and the lower part and the batten pocket all joined together on this seam. But since the batten pocket is not exposed to sunlight, we're going to use Dacron thread, which is stronger as long as you don't expose it to the sunlight, and it's a lot easier to sew with. And it's a lot less expensive, because these things that's $100 a piece for like 1,400 yards, and the Dacron is like $40 for 8,000 yards or something, so it's a huge difference in price. One thing to remember when you're going back and forth from V138 Dacron to V92 Tanara is to change the upper thread tension, because the Dacron requires a lot more upper thread tension than the Tanara, especially when you're sewing through new Dacron sailcloth, which is what we'll be doing. There are dozens of different ways to build lazy bags, of course, and one of the reasons I prefer doing it the way I'm showing is that the batten pocket is a continuously closed pocket. Well, except for the one end where you put the batten in. And as opposed to a lot of lazy bags, they'll have a cutout where you tie the lazy lines onto the batten, directly to the batten, which makes for a very strong connection, but you need two people to put the batten into the bag, which annoys the shit out of me. Another reason I don't do that. Anyway, this goes out of the way for the moment. Now, I think, what's the name of this boat is Finally. I don't know if we have their battens or not, or if she gets new battens. Four. long bag. You can have some extra space at either end. Is good. 5-inch wide 6-ounce tape. My custom tape holding device. And I think we'll use white. We use the seatbelt webbing again. It's nice because it lasts for a long time. This stuff does with your battens. The nylon. This is also nylon, but it's not as strong a weave as the seatbelt stuff. It's not as thick either. Okay, so we'll do the aft end. Forward end is going to be like that. Times 2. Then I usually do straight up Velcro closure on these, and this is what we're going to do on this one. On the sail, I usually prefer to tie the pockets closed, and because the Velcro rail, it'll chafe. I mean, on the leech of the sail, there's all sorts of chafing action, and every time you tack, it rubs on the topping lift, and some of them on the backstay, and it's also where the sunlight damages the cloth the most on the leech aft, so the closure has to be pretty strong on a sail because it gets a lot of abuse, and that's why I prefer to actually mechanically tie the battens in. On a stack pack, it's not out there blowing in the wind, it's just sitting supported by it takes a kind of a beating too, but this seems to work pretty effectively, and it's quick and easy to install the battens. Cut 4 of each, hook in a loop. What we're going to end up doing is making a sandwich out of the tongue, I guess you could call it. And so we'll have a hook on one side, loop on the other, and that's going to be sewn on to the end of the pocket, and then it will have the loop on this side and the hook will be on a cover, so it all gets squished down. That's why we've cut 4 of each. So first thing, just attach that to the webbing. Straight stitch because it's fast and most economical thread. for a moment, and we'll start aft. Aft into the stack pack. The webbing, so the webbing takes all of the force of the batten. Okay, so since it's structural webbing, we're gonna do tiny little steps, 1 millimeter long, 10 millimeter wide. Get the most knots per inch or per centimeter.
I like your wavy design.
Yeah.
I guess that's a lot of practice.
Another way to sew it on without ever lifting the foot. Of course, I'd much prefer. And you can see the thread tension on the bottom is pretty good. That is almost closed on the upper thread on this machine. It's changed over the years. I'm not sure why, but whatever, we all do. Oops. So we're just going to sew that back end shut, and now go for speed, because this part doesn't have to be strong. This is just building and making the pocket. It's actually be sewn again at the same place once we attach it, when we attach it to the bag. So. Must be getting close here. We're going 14'6". We have currently 10'11", so we need another 10, 11, another. First the hem. We're going to go back to our super strong, wide, short. Shoe thread better than that. Okay, this one's going to be here. It's the hook side, so we put the loop onto the pocket. And go back to the straight stitch for this, because it's not a structural issue at all. That's it. We can close this up. Then the final little bit of this is the other cover. So this goes down like that. And then it's a hook we need for this. So we're going to make a little piece of a little, what is this, a door? Something. Here again, I've figured out a way to do this where you don't actually have to lift up the needle ever.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Because I do it a lot of freaking anal and weird like stuff. So if I start just before the Velcro, or just straight stitch. This is another example of something you can do with or without tape that I used to do with tape, and that I no longer bother because, as you can see, it's a little more difficult to hold it all in place. If it was taped together, I'd just be speeding around in circles. But tape is $7 a roll and takes a bunch of time to install. So this in the long run, this is way faster and cheaper. There. This edge I put in the, that'll go in the seam. This edge will be down. That can wait until much later when the bag is close to finished. We'll sew this into place. I'm going to go ahead and make the other one.
Same stuff.
Exactly the same.
Over again.
All over again. Sides. So we're going to make these opposite. One this way and one that way. So that means I want to sew this. That's going to be the bottom. So that we have one left hand, one right hand, so to speak. One thing this machine does, especially with Tanara, is it will skip when you lift up the presser foot and spin the material when the needle is down. You're going around a corner, you lift up the presser foot and spin it. oftentimes that will cause the loop to not form, and you'll end up with, instead of having a nice sharp square corner, you'll end up with a 45-degree angle because you missed the corner stitch. So when I'm doing stuff that I really care about the looks, not this so much, but I will always double step the corner, put two stitches in the same place, and that way you won't end up missing that corner stitch. Obviously, this being a batten pocket, it's inside a sail bag. No one will ever notice, and it's always going to be closed too, pretty much. So no one would ever know or care if you did miss the corner stitch. But right back up. That is the last thing we're going to do with B138 Dacron thread in this bag. Everything else, that's not true. On the bottom, depending on how we finish the bottom, we may use Dacron thread to sew the two halves together at the bottom, because that never sees sunlight, and it'll be finished with some sort of tape of polyester Dacron tape like this, or maybe one that's slightly stronger. But nevertheless, also it'll burn in the ultraviolet, but it gets so little sunlight on the bottom of the bag that it lasts for the lifetime of the bag anyway, and we can sew that with polyester thread. But that's the only other place on the bag we'll be using polyester thread. Basically, we use polyester on everything that is built out of polyester, which would be sails. And we use Tanara on everything that is built out of sunbrella. One of the fun little things that Tanara does, it's horrible crap to sew with, but it lasts forever, for the life of the material. It's actually guaranteed, not when you put it on a sail, but in a sail bag, for instance. One of the things that Tanara loves to do is it makes, like this, it'll make a little half hitch, because it comes off the spool like that, and it makes a little half hitch, and then if you're not paying attention, I think this probably happened to you, and it gets, that half hitch goes through the upper thread tension, it will pop out of the upper thread tensioner, and you don't really notice, because the upper thread, whether it's tense or not, looks the same, but until you turn it over and you see that all the upper thread is just, there's like a mile of it on the underside of whatever you're stitching, because there's no tension on it, and then you end up wasting huge amounts of thread. So what I do to try and give it a little more pre-tension is I run it, instead of coming straight off of the thread to here, I run it around this stand, and that usually does the trick. It gives it enough tension that it won't tie itself in knots. Alright, next thing is to sew the batten pocket into the bag on each side. This one goes on this side. We're just going to start it. The hem, when I finish the hem, it's going to end up there. So I'm going to leave just enough room to put a grommet in here. this edge, I want it to be right up even with this, so that when we attach the upper part to the lower part in the batten pocket all together, we want to make sure that I'll be sewing on from the outside, and so I won't be able to see anything what's going on. So we want it to be right there, so you get this completely sewn in, but not too far to make the batten pocket too small, not too far away or you'll miss it. I used to do this with adhesive tape, but there again, adhesive tape costs a lot of money. You have to sew it at some point anyway, and you might as well just sew it first, and then you don't have to use half as much tape. So I backed up. 7¼ inches from the edge. Here's my secret stash of big chalk that I don't let my dog play with. Ready to join the top to the bottom. I used to build them, I used to put them together like that, so that, and that's how quantum does them. That's where I get this design from mostly. But I had a client who complained because when it was sewn together, you could see the, the edge of the pocket. And I was like, really? But, so I changed the way I do it. Now we build them like this, so that it goes bottom, top, and then the pocket. And one advantage is that the sun can't burn the top edge of the pocket, which has no effect on anything, but except that it just burns. One of the nice things about it is that when we tape the top to the bottom, we'll be actually taping from Dacron to Dacron, and the basting tape sticks a lot better to Dacron than it does to Sunbrella. It barely sticks to Sunbrella at all. And so we can get a much stronger, much better adhesion. Another reason to fully line the top of the bag. Now you notice when we built these, when Damian cut them, they were exactly the same length. But when I sew this batten pocket in, and when we sewed the hem, because of the thread tension, every thread squeezes that a little bit tighter. And so when you get something that's 15 or 20 feet long, you'll end up with quite a discrepancy in length. And so we're going to try and take that out. And usually can. It just means we have to stretch that one and then leave the top part relaxed. We're going to have a 1/2 inch wide joint, and then I'm going to go ahead and put basting tape on where the pocket is. It's easier to get at. I want that tape to be right in line on the edge, so that we'll use this tape to line up the top with the pocket, which is already lined up at the bottom. And when it's all said and done, they should be all overlapping each other by 1/2 inch, so that all of the stitching, or at least most of the stitching that we do when we stitch these upper and lower part together, will everything will be stitched together at the same time. So that's where I'm going to put that. The tape is right about lined up, a little bit inside the edge of this pocket. One of the failure modes of the lazy bag, a pretty common one, is to have the load of the sail will actually distort the bag and break the thread right here at this seam. Especially on big catamarans and like, you know, Lagoon 500s, 50 footers and stuff, where the sail weighs 250 pounds, and then you get pressure from the wind when you're sailing on there's a lot of stress anyway on these, and so this joint can fail. This is one of the reasons we put the extra layers of sunbrella and Dacron here to reinforce that, so it doesn't distort this part of the bag. But it can still break the seam open, so I'm changing over to heavyweight Tanara thread, which is fabulously expensive, twice the price of the lightweight, which is why I don't use it for everything. In fact, I only use it on this seam because it's the most heavily stressed seam on the bag, and I've had a number of bags I built, again, all from really big catamarans, that the seam failed when I used the lightweight Tanara. So this is analogous to a V138. It's like 15 to 18 pounds average break, which means every stitch you get 15 pounds. And we're going to put a lot of them in here. Of course, most of the seam doesn't have much stretch at all. The stress is concentrated right where the bag is attached to the mast, naturally. I'm going to do it 2 millimeters long, 10 wide. You'll notice that I almost never do anything other than full width or 0 width straight. And very occasionally I'll change that to being in here somewhere. but almost never. So we need a lot more thread tension than that. So that's closed, and you back it off about half a turn from completely shut. Try not to sew the tongue of the pocket in to the seam. I don't know if you can hear, but if you listen close, you'll be able to hear when I end up on this side. You'll be able to hear if it's going through those 2 layers of 5 or 6 ounce Dacron to make up the pocket or not, because it'll have a different noise if it's going through all that material or just going through, what is this, a layer of Dacron and whatever, and not going through the pocket. Now it's going through everything. No, it's still not. There it is. If you get a little bit further out, it's missing the last. It sounds a little different on the right-hand side anyway. That's what happens if you forget to change your thread tension. Next thing is to tidy up the ends and whatnot. We're gonna hem the ends with a double rubbed seam. Ease up our thread tension. This is the front, yeah. In the front, we're going to put an angle in that corner so that it's easier to get at the clew of the sail. And when you're attaching the clew, you can access the what do you call those things? Shackle.
Sorry.
the little closure thing that makes a sandwich. So that way the batten goes in there, and then you tighten it down like that. Put that on top. So it gets twice as much Velcro in it. There's no flipping where it'll come out.
What are you making snips for?
It'll, when we put the zipper on there, this will allow that, because it's an inside corner, so obviously this edge is longer than this edge, and if you don't open them up, it won't lay flat.
Oh.
Clue is 14.7, reef 1 is 12.7, and clue is 11. That's how far after the mast the reef points are. So when you reef the sail down, you want that reef line to be vertical. And so it's going to come down 11 feet aft. The reef line will theoretically be right there. And we're going to leave this slot 8 inches wide, 4 inches either side of my measurement, the center. So there's 11, 12'7", which is right there, and 14.7 is the clue. So I want to be no ways away from that. We're going to just stay totally away from that by putting, I'll end up with one slide there and one slide here, and then the whole rest will be sewn together. We're going to put webbing on the bottom of the lazy bag where the lines go through, where the reef lines will run through, because otherwise they'll chafe holes in the bag. This, I'm just going to run it continuously right on through, even where I'm going to put, even where we're going to put slides. It doesn't need to be there, but it's, might as well. I'm sewing webbing onto things for chafe gear or whatnot. I always try to sew it from the outside, because if you get it, if it's not right on half and half, your stitches sometimes, they don't line up as nicely on this side, for example, because it's a little bit wider there than it is on the front, on the outside. So this is the side everyone sees. So that's, we're going to make it nice. So that's the second reef point, second and last in this particular case. Just going to run this a little bit past where we start the tape that we'll use to sew these two together. Ready. Start sewing the two halves together. Sometimes I use bolt rope if I have any available. And times I buy it pre-made. Sometimes I've made it, but it's really difficult to build. And bolt rope is, you use it on the luff and the foot of sails because because then the pressure of the outhaul or the halyard that's pulling on the sail will be transferred to the rope, and it won't distort the fabric. That's the idea behind it. In this case, there is no pressure pulling longitudinally across the bottom of the bag. The only reason to use bolt rope is either because you're going to slide the bolt rope directly into the boom, into the slot in the boom, which I did on that bag we made yesterday, or just because it's strong. But in this case, I don't have any available, and I'm going to use Spectra tape. It's very strong as well, and just designed for chafe. Again, it's not an issue here, but I do like to have its strength. And so we'll tape the two halves together, and then when we're all done sewing everything, we'll go ahead and put a grommet through there and then web a slide onto the bottom. And so there'll be several discrete slides webbed onto the bottom of the bag instead of the bolt rope being fully engaged in the boom. So that's the first one. Another piece here, another slide, and we could make it that long, but I'm just going to make it shorter. All it needs to do is be a location for one grommet to be installed. The other place I was talking about earlier where we could use V138 Dacron thread instead, because it's stronger and it's not exposed to the sunlight down here. But I'm not. One of the reasons is because in this tape I get to make two passes. If it was a real thin bolt rope and I only had one pass, I would use the stronger thread. But since I get double thread, half as strong, it all winds up the same. That's what I was talking about earlier with the webbing, where I put one on each side of the line. I make the line, so I line them up there and then mark so the webbing doesn't sit right on top of each other where you get a big unsightly lump. Not that this machine could care less about going through twice as much webbing, but just one of those little things. finishing things come next. We're gonna put some chafe gear on the back end of the bag, because that's where the reef lines come through there, and of course the sail is there, the clew is there, and this is a place that gets chafed a lot, and you see it on older bags. That's one of the things we do a lot on bags that don't have chafe gears. We end up putting it put some zippers on the front. The way I design these bags, they'll have a removable front piece that wraps around the front of the mast, so that when you're sailing daily or whatever, and you park the boat, you can just zip it shut and leave it. The whole front then is open and exposed to sunlight and stuff, but it's not a big deal. But then when you store the boat and you park it up for the season, or you stay an anchor for the same place for a month or something, then you'll want to cover that up. And so that's the very last thing we build, is after we've installed the bag and make sure it fits and everything, then I go with a tape measure and I can measure across the bottom and measure across the top and make a cover that fits tight and nice on the specific boat. So, but we'll go ahead and put the zippers on here, so that after we install the cover, then they'll be ready to go. We just unzip the halves and glue them on to the piece that's usually wider at the top than the bottom. All the zippers are YKK. Almost always I got double pull, because then I don't have to think about which side to put the tape on. And I usually get plastic double pull, but sometimes they're not available from my suppliers. These are metal, they're zinc, and they rot in the salt water. The pole does. Maybe 5 years of life before it just doesn't move anymore, maybe less. But zippers are about the easiest thing to replace, and they cost like, I don't know, $5 or something, so it's not like a huge deal. If your zipper fails, then take it to some place, and it's not a difficult thing. Like, anyone with a sewing machine can do this job. So we just assume zippers are not forever, but and of course there are other ways to do this. A lot of stack packs, they use, they put extra material on this front part, and then sew some like bungee cord into it, so that it sort of covers up around the front of the sail. And that works all right. But the bungee cord doesn't last that long either, so it's 6.5 dozen. I think this method looks sharper, looks better, and you don't have a bunch of extra material flapping around when you're actually sailing. I always start the zipper at the bottom, and that's where they put it together. You can start at the top. There's some advantages when you're installing the cover if you start the zipper at the top, but it can also be a monstrous pain in the ass. So This way I prefer. I've done them both. I'm going to start it with the zigzag because the very top and the bottom of the zipper are prone to tearing out. There's a lot of force at the top and the bottom, whereas in the middle the force is spread out over the zipper, but at the ends they have a tendency to tear. So I start and finish with a zigzag. The other reason is that in this machine, on a number 10 zipper, I can just catch it when I'm straight stitching. But down at the bottom, where the zipper starter thing is, it pushes the needle off the edge. And so unless you use a zigzag, you can't actually get any stitching into the zipper itself. In the front, this is where the head of the sail is going to live. This is very prone to chafe as well. There's the halyards that run past there. Sometimes there are reefing lines running down the mast. Various things like that. I'm also going to use this piece of webbing as a zipper stop. What else? I think we're ready for the zipper now. The main one. Aft, we're going to let it hang out a little ways. The zipper is pretty stretchy. Stretchier than the bag is by far. So if you don't tape it on, you'll end up with the two ends not being the same place. The two sides of the bag won't meet at the front or the back. And it helps that it's flat too. I use white stuff, if it's appropriate. Like that, kind of like the combination, the white and the blue. But white things, all white things, zip ties, thread, zippers, break down in the sun faster than black things. Reason being, somebody told me one time that it takes less energy to absorb than it does to reflect light, and thus the actual atoms of any material are moving around less, even though it's hotter. try to stick the zipper on here so that when it's shut, these two, the cover on either side covers it completely. And that will protect it from the sun. I used to, and I have in the past, put like a flap over it so that you can zip it shut and then cover it and the flap goes down. But the flap gets in the way of the zipper, and then it's like another thing. You have to go back and cover up the zipper, and I hold them down with Velcro. The Velcro would get burnt and shredded, and then it stopped. You know, it just didn't work very well. So I just tried my best to make sure that the cover is completely shut, and so sort of place the zipper in the center between the two pieces. And stick it down, and you go another few feet and do it again. The same customer complained because in this union here he could see the edge of the tape that makes up the batten pocket. He complained that when the zipper, I used to make just a 1/2 inch seam here, and I sew it in here, and he could see the white when he opened up the zipper. I was like, really? But, so I started making, instead of a 1/2 inch seam, I made an 1 1/4 seam, which is the width of half the zipper. Partly so I wouldn't have to listen to that complaint, but more because it really makes it nice when you're sewing now, because, as I said earlier, the tape doesn't stick to Sunbrella nearly as well as it sticks to Dacron. And especially on a thing this big, I'm going to unzip it and then put it up on the table and then move it all around and flip it around and sew it all. And by the time I'm done, a bunch of it's going to come unstuck. Not all of it, but having that 1 1/4 seam would be nice. You'll see it'll line up with the edge of the zipper so that I can tell if at some point, like especially in the curved part here, it's really hard to get the to get it to stay closed. So we'll be able to see, like here it's a little bit open. We'll see that when we open it up again. So you can see already this has come undone right here. It's because you can see the thing, and you want to see the edge of this material should be about even with this, and that will cause them to overlap very slightly, the two halves of the bag.
Why do you do this? I don't understand that part.
It's to allow the zipper to be open and free and let the bag fall open, because this is where the reef lines are coming down right there. So most of them, with the reefing lines are at the back of the boom, they come down right there. So that allows the zipper to be open, not get cut by the reef lines, which is a common problem. And then the webbing is to protect it from the sun. And then after we install the zipper pull, after we install the bag, sometimes it's handy to have the zipper open when you first install the sail, and then you can close it afterwards. And then we'll take a little piece of webbing, and after the zipper pull is on there, we'll put it across and sew it, just hand sew it when it's on the boat. And then the zipper pull won't fall off the back end when you're sailing. And you can still, all you have to do is just pull, cut the threads. The hand stitching, you just cut it out and open up the zipper if you want to. For example, most boats you have to take the sail off to get the cover. Either take the sail off or open the zipper, one or the other, to get this cover off. All boats, in fact, you have to either open the zipper or take the sail off. And sometimes, if the sail is big enough, it's a lot easier to open the zipper and then sew it shut by hand than it is to take the damn thing off. Is that it? We doing grommets yet? I think it's down to grommets.
One grommet every how many feet?
Every couple feet. Sails, it's usually every 30 inches, 32 inches on the low. Although it depends on the maker. This has got a lot of pressure on the bag, so I put them a little closer. First, he's gonna practice not hitting your fucking hand. It takes a while too. pieces. Oh, that's good. So slides.
You hand sewing them? Are you hand sewing them? Like the ones?
Yeah,
There you go. What are you doing?
I already sew and shut the zipper. So it's not necessary with the number 15 YKK zipper because you can start them fairly easily, but on this boat at least you have to climb on top of the solar panels, and unless you're pretty scrawny it's not going to work very well. So we're just going to sew it shut, and that way the only drawback to this is that the zipper, when it's shut like this, it stays closed, and the reef lines come up from the back of the boom and go right through here, and it chafes on the zipper after a while. But it's a convenience thing. Hope it doesn't chafe too much. Wait, can you give me the scissors? Do you have it? No.
I mean, a real professional rigger would have scissors.
Would have had the scissors with him, yeah.
What do you need?
The scissors.
T'as pas entendu? T'as pas compris?
A real professional rigger would speak French. Be able to ask for scissors in the right language. Thank you. Okay, so zipper's closed. Zipper pulls in. She looks pretty good, huh?
Looks pretty good.
Okay, the last thing to do that we haven't been able to film is the front cover. Zipper's here. And now we're just going to get a measurement to go inside those. So, 3 measurements: bottom, top, bottom, and the length, the height. So you got my jib halyard there. Go around all this stuff. 32 inches, looks good. And then up here, 28, 27 inches. By 32. So it's 32 to 27 at 30 by 32. And we'll just cut that out of a piece of Dacron to the exact size, and then we'll make this umbrella bigger. 2 inches all the way around. Switch over from making bags to making money again. So, it's too narrow when you're sewing with it. really likes to make a loop, a simple knot in the thread as it's on its way to the machine. And if the knot, like right there is one. So if that knot goes through the upper thread tension, it will pop out of the upper thread tension, and you can hear it if you're listening real close. It goes tink. But if you're not paying attention and you don't see it come out of the upper thread tension, you can see it too, but it's not a place that you normally look. You'll be sewing along and the top thread looks the same, but the bottom thread, it ends up pulling this huge loop with every stitch. So you get done sewing, it all looks great, you flip it over and there's like 100 yards of thread and about a foot of stitching. And you have to rip it all out again. If you go through all three of these holes on before the upper thread tension, it helps to try and keep those knots from popping the thread out of the tensioner. But basically, if you see one coming along, you just have to give it a little jerk and it'll go away. But the way the thread comes off a cone like this, it gives it one twist as it's coming off. So, because if you pull rope off of a spool like that straight up, you'll have a mess. All the rope will have a twist going all the way up it, and it's horribly annoying. So when we pull rope off a spool, you do it straight. You do it like this, and then you won't get a twist. But with thread, it actually helps. It makes it a little stronger to get that twist in there. At least with Dacron. I'm not sure about now, but that's the way it works with sewing machines, so that's what you get. Straight stitch, double rub seam, hem, whatever this is. I think I've said somewhere in another video that if you want to get super anal with your stitching, a lot of times when you open up, when you lift the foot and spin it around, it'll undo the knot you made down there on the bobbin case, and you'll skip the stitch, and it's the stitch right in the very corner will get skipped. So the stitching will go from here to there at an angle. And so if you want to get anal, like me, because I love getting really anal, because there's really nothing else to do when you're sewing. It's so freaking boring. Once you've done it for a few thousand hours, this way you can make sure if you stitch it twice in the corner when you get to your stopping place, take it out and put it down again, then turn it. And then if you skip one of the stitches, the other one helps.
Get anal. Is that correct?
Yes. My brushes are... The brushes on this machine are wearing out, and it needs to be hit. Wait.
What's the point on doing this?
So you can get that to fold under, otherwise it doesn't fold. Just need to remember which one's the top. And short side, the top. So we're starting our zippers on the bottom, always. I've done them in the top before, and look at that, I missed like 4 in a row right there. They're both hard. Whether you start the zipper at the bottom or the top, it's hard either way. I think it's a little easier at the bottom, but the front cover is not the easiest thing to put on. But you don't really need it. If you're sailing, you just leave it off because who cares? You just, leave it off overnight or for a weekend or for a few days or a week or whatever. And then when you cover up the boat and leaving it for a month or something, you put this on and it keeps the mainsail really well protected. And other lower quality lazy bag designs have a permanently installed luff covering device of some kind. Some of them have it wraps around the mast and it's always there, and so it's flopping around when you're sailing and it gets in the way of everything. Horrible. Others have a piece of, what is that crap? The bungee cord sewn in, so there's like a flap that goes a little bit beyond, and then a bungee cord sewn into it so that it sort of curls around and protects the front of the sail, but it doesn't really curl around very well, and it doesn't really last very well, and it doesn't really look very good, so we don't do that. I line up my zippers for sewing. I like to line it up so that the teeth are just even with that edge. That way you'll have just a little bit of extra. It closes just a little bit better. You gotta protect the zippers from sunlight because they disintegrate in 2 years tops. These do in the sunshine. I like a 3/8 inch wide strip of 2 inch wide seatbelt webbing. Makes a real nice zipper stop. It's wide enough that you can sew it and it looks pretty good. As always, we're going to start this in the widest zigzag I have. And then sew it straight. Plus on this end, with that thing in the way, you can't actually get the foot as close as you can the rest of it. And so if you tried to do that straight, you only catch about the last, I don't know, very, very small amount of the zipper because you'll be turning off this side. Just need to cut off the extra zipper with a hot knife, and we'll go see if it fits. Good. Very handy, the breeze holds it up there nice.
Done.
Done. Finally. Yeah, last one, I think.
Why?
Why? Because Chloe's gonna be doing